Welcome, Ted, to the Presencing the Depths podcast. It's a pleasure to have you back for a second time.
Thank you so much for having me back. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So I just wanted to sort of introduce you a little bit for those who are unfamiliar with who you are. I came to know you through your work with Trillium and the model that you'd built around waking down initially and then what became I Conscious. And I bought your book, I Conscious, and loved that book. Really loved the model that you built there in the stages. Like it was just intellectual candy to me. Like I loved eating it up and getting a feel for it. Um, and and also, I have worked with you a number of times one-on-one together, and that work was really valuable to me, in particularly for me in getting a fine-grained appreciation of exactly what awareness is in my experience, because I had some ideas about what awareness was, but working with you kind of refined that for me, and I can put a finer point on that now. And also, you offer couples work. So yourself and your wife Hillary offer couples work together, and Ariel and I, my wife and I, did some of that with you, and that was really, really good for us too. There's a different dynamic doing couples work that way. Um, yeah, but is there anything you want to say about the work that you're doing currently, or the work that you've got coming up?
Wow. One of the huge projects that I've been on since the beginning of 2024 was the attempt to create an AI agent that can help people in the way that I help people.
Mm-hmm.
It was an enormous kind of training effort that was going on
Mm-hmm.
that platform we were working with at the time. And unfortunately, the platform really wasn't up to what we needed it to do. So after a heck of a lot of work, I ended up having to restructure things tremendously, found another platform that actually worked a lot better and was way cheaper, and um,
Mm-hmm.
still realized that there's other things to be done in that arena that we can't do with any other platform, really, because most of them are
Mm-hmm.
going to charge too much for tokens. So we're building our own, and I'm about to test a new version of it. So it's quite exciting, and there's a lot.
Wow.
Hey, but I don't want to, mix that into today's thing. But that's what's, part
Cool.
of what my background. And the other part of it is that I guess I'm just sort of amazed to watch how applying the eye conscious knowledge that Carol and I clarified together over the years, deepening it for myself and helping clients in advanced stages. It is really something.
Mm.
That basically we don't have to live in these old stages of development anymore. We just don't have to. If people
Yeah.
want their stages, if they want to live more free, they can.
Yeah.
And we have the know-how to help people do that very directly. So
Mm.
my experience these days is I can off generally take a client from like stage 5 to stage 10 in a year instead of,
Wow.
people never getting there in their lives. They'll get to
Yeah.
this really advanced stage in a short period of time because it's
Yeah.
not actually difficult. What makes it difficult are the myths of enlightenment. And that's why I'm
Mm.
talking today about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, that's a good segue. And yeah, I really appreciate that you're able to say something so clearly like that. I can take someone from stage 5 to stage 10 in a year of working with them, if they're willing and if they're open to it. Yeah. All right. So the myths of enlightenment. Can you tell me about how exactly you see that? What are the big myths of enlightenment?
Well, first, I want to say I have a sort of very long-term view on this phrase, myths of enlightenment, because I started pursuing enlightenment from the time I was 13, thinking that that was
Hmm.
going to save me from all my problems and sent me to like the peak of human evolution in an instant. And so, actually, what I really love to do is play that myth that I was living in back then by
Great.
reading like a couple of paragraphs of something I've posted on my website. So
Great.
it
Yeah.
starts with this. It's not a myth that as we grow, we blossom awake to the awesome mysteries of life, self, and being. The myth is that if you have extraordinary karma, or if you're a good spiritual person and a diligent practitioner, or if you're just plain lucky, or if you succeed in killing or at least marginalizing your ego, perhaps one fine day you'll have the ultimate realization of truth. Hopefully, in a single spectacular white lightning flash of God's self realization with fireworks, you'll attain a state of enlightenment that instantly resolves the mystery, ends your awakening process, vanquishes all traces of fear, pain, suffering, and places you in the true self as opposed to the false bad one in the corner with the dunce cap.
Hmm.
This glorious shift will transport you to a transcendent sanctuary of pure consciousness, beyond the petty problems and stupidities of humanity, and bestow upon you perfect or permanent health, happiness, contentment, wisdom, immortality, or at least a passable tolerance for the unenlightened. Enlightenment will be so cool. Suddenly, you'll always feel good, confident, sexy, maybe even charismatic, almost inhumanly peaceful, universally expanded at all times, amazingly psychic, and perhaps even a little omniscient. You'll be free from all bondage, limits, karmas, worlds, bodies, problems, and maybe even food. You'll have finally mastered yourself. Nothing will ever hurt again, which, by the way, is the meaning of nirvana, no pain. You'll be
Hmm.
in this world, but not of it. Consciously choosing to be here entirely, of course, for the sake of others. You'll sprout perfect wisdom, attain cosmic vision, have endless compassion for all beings, including people who really irritate you, or challenge or channel discarnate entities, perhaps. If you're really lucky, you'll get some serious powers like the ability to levitate or become invisible or walk through walls or manifest stuff at will. You'll never be angry, jealous, possessive, dramatic, or demanding, as all such lowly selfish qualities will long since have been purified from your system in favor of only virtuous and self-sacrificing ones. If you're getting in a little tone of cynicism, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one more paragraph. From your countenance and your whole being shall emanate an aura of golden light. And when you pass by on the street, those with true eyes and an honest heart will instantly recognize your divinity and fall at your feet, begging for your grace and blessing upon their dark and wretched soul. You will resonate with higher and higher frequencies as you climb upward toward the higher self, which must be up there somewhere. On that brilliant day when you attain the highest peak, the angels will sing aloud, and never again will you fall into the valley of darkness or despair. Enlightenment will be your gateway to heaven, where you'll live in perfect bliss, harmony, and contentment forever and ever. Amen. So
That's
let's
great.
get that out of my system.
Yeah.
Um, in a lot of ways, that sounds a lot like the inherent promises in the transcendental meditation movement, which I spent a lot of my
Hmm.
time in.
Hmm.
Maharishi, loved to say 200% of life, divine and human. But the only thing that was ever juiced in that movement was meditation, consciousness, and the divine.
Yeah.
And anything that was dark or difficult or had to do with relationships or sex or money or, the people didn't talk about any of that stuff, right?
Hmm.
And as I branched out in my life, I started to notice that a lot of, especially Eastern spirituality, has this bizarre tint of puritanicalism. And then you've got the Western side of things where, people are really into the psychological, psycho-emotional, and somatic side of things. But when it comes to actually integrating the infinite consciousness part, there's some way in which they don't really know how to handle that either. So there's been
Hmm.
silos in the schools of personal development. The East and the
Hmm.
West, they have not been meeting very well, either on the outside or in our own brains.
Hmm.
So we
Yeah.
need some balance. We need some integration. That's what I'm here to say. I'm here
Yeah.
not only to point at the ways in which our understandings have been disintegrated, but I'm here to also point out what integration looks like and what it means and how to understand it and how to do practices and think about your own process in a way that makes it easy to integrate your whole being. So we're not pushing parts of ourselves away for the sake of enlightenment or anything or anybody. And we're
Hmm.
living our whole truth and we're speaking it as much as we can in ways that are as skillful as possible so that people
Yeah.
can fulfill their purpose and not just spend endless lifetimes looping around these myths of enlightenment that are not only stabbing us personally and hindering our process tremendously, which I want to talk about today, but it's having an impact on us socially. And I remember my father, when I started getting into this stuff when I was really young, and I asked my father about his interest in it, and he's like, I can't afford to spend my life on the top of a mountain, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
that's right there, right? The yogi on the top of the mountain, which I actually have on my website on one of my pieces. Um,
Yeah.
because of that. Thank you, Dad. But he's not the only guy who got this impression and decided it's not for me because if that's what it is, it's not practical.
Right. Right.
And I'm here to say if it's not practical and it's not integrated, it's not even spirituality.
Hmm.
It's not what I would
Hmm.
call spirituality. It's not what I would call whole being awakening.
Yeah.
And without the integrated whole being awakening approach, um, any idea of spirituality as a separate realm that needs to be developed is a mistake. It's
Hmm.
really a mistake, and it gets in the way.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm ranting a lot. Anything up for
No.
you? What I've said
Yes,
so.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, I appreciate a lot of things in what you said, and there's a couple of points that I want to pick up on. So, the first one is around the moment of awakening. Like, there's a myth that there is a moment in time when everything will be wonderful and everything will be, divine and expanded, and it will be like that forevermore because I've achieved enlightenment, and then I don't have to deal with the issues of being human forevermore, right? It's all gone. So I agree with you in the sense that that moment of awakening doesn't make all of those things disappear, but I would also say in my experience and in so my background and my history mainly is with my previous teacher Vishrant and his way of teaching and his way of seeing things. So that's kind of the lens through which I'm seeing. But um, I would say that there comes a moment when you are living as awareness and your identity shifts. Yeah. And your model would speak to that as well. Like the shift from stage 6 to 7 and the shift, I think there's another shift later. So there are moments in time where shifts happen and changes in your experience in this life happen. And so I just kind of wanted to double
Balance.
click on that a little bit.
Yeah, you want some balance there. And I appreciate that. I totally appreciate that because it's true. We've got a spectrum between moments of realization and the endless process of realization, and both are true. I
Yeah.
mean, there are some people I know who almost never have these big shifts, sudden high contrast shifts. I'm the opposite. I have that sudden high contrast shifts. But most people have this kind of up and down, this gradual stuff, the different zones of their being all developing at different times, like an electron cloud, right? And so, and there are these moments when suddenly there's a zap of electricity and we're in a new orbit in our own awareness. And that really happens. And yes, I've mapped a lot of that in the I-conscious model. Um,
Mm,
so I'm here to totally agree with you. Yeah, we got both of those
right.
things. Yeah.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah. So that was one thing. The other thing that you mentioned was around like this myth that we get access to superhuman powers, right? that there are these things that come alive in us when we're awake that are like otherworldly and you can read people's minds or something like that, right? And so I would agree that there are a lot of myths out there that are not true and that are, exaggerated, let's say, but also that and it's not my experience. So I'm drawing on other people's experience here, but there are things within, say, the occult realm where you start having access to past life memories. You can remember what happened in previous lives, thousands of years ago, or you can have access to there's mentioned in the literature like the Akashic records, which is the sum total of all human knowledge from, from all of our history as a collective species, and being able to tap into that or download some of that. And then also being able to read the energy really, really clearly of other people, not their thoughts necessarily, but being able to tune into what's going on for them energetically in any particular moment and be able to feel that and articulate that. So, and they may or may not be, those things that I just mentioned, those three things may or may not be related directly to awakening, but they are potentials for human consciousness that can be realized along the way. All right, so I just wanted to kind of, yeah, throw that back and see what you had to say about that.
Absolutely agree with that. A lot of that is basically the unique genius of that person. And the more aware
Mm,
they are, the more they're living their own unique genius. But then it's confusing.
hmm.
That's what my big study has been. What's confusing is that you've got these very awake, unique geniuses that are saying some similar sorts of things. And some of it seems to align across these confusing zones, and others of them look like really different. And so, like, what the hell's going on here? And
Yes.
I'm here to say that when it comes to the awakening process, there are average markers we can use, and that's what's in the I conscious model. The
Yes.
markers don't say what the uniqueness is of that person, but the model says that uniqueness is super important in figuring all of this out. Super.
Hmm.
We've got to allow for the uniqueness of the individual when we're looking at the development process. If we don't,
Hmm.
try to homogenize everybody into this one, it's not going to work at all.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the myth that you're describing really is that these kinds of superhuman powers don't happen to everyone. So you shouldn't be really looking for them to happen to you, because if you are, that's going to send you down all kinds of rabbit holes that may lead to dead ends for you.
Speaking of dead ends, I just want to mention that Maharishi, bless his soul, but now that he's long gone, I can say that he was selling these, city programs, the superhuman course programs, which I
Yeah.
took. I went through that whole thing. I did all of that. Not to say that none of it had any impact at all. Some of it did a little, nothing
Hmm.
quite like what was advertised, a little. But other than that, he also kept amping it up until he finally had people paying him $1 million for a course.
Right.
Getting
Right.
none of them awoke. They just were reaching for superhuman powers. You know, and
Right.
I see a lot of people in a lot of traditions chasing these rainbows, and thinking that enlightenment is what that rainbow happens to look like or what the teacher happens to look like, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For
And
sure.
I say that there
Sure.
are stages of idealism. And if we can at least look at that, we can begin to get, oh, that was all, stage 5 stuff. Very idealistic. We're young. We're idealistic about everything, including spirituality. But, this really, I should say right here, is the fundamental parting zone between the people, between stage 5 and stage 6. It's the parting zone between people who are going for the up and out awakening and the people who are going for the down and in awakening. And these
Hmm.
are completely different trajectories.
Hmm.
The people who are, I was into the up and out trajectory for 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm here to say it didn't work for me. And,
Mm.
even though the whole TM movement was kind of about that, millions of them. Only a very small handful, two, three, four, five, maybe people ever claimed any kind of awakening out of millions that took that. So I think it's fair to say it didn't work. And this is part of the myth busting that I'm here to do, right? Let's get realistic about this stuff. What actually works and what doesn't work. That's what my life's work is all about. That's why I'm so fired
Yeah.
up about the topic.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So on that point about the rarity of awakening for the TM movement, I'd say that rarity is generalizable across most spiritual practices and methodologies, right? And so I appreciate you at the start saying, well, I can take someone from stage 5 to stage 10 in a year, if they're willing and they're going to work with me, because you're kind of in a way you're sticking your neck out there and saying, I found something that really works. And so if
Yes.
you work with me, we can help you progress.
Yes.
But to me, saying TM had millions of people practicing it and only a handful woke up isn't really disparaging TM, honestly, because I feel like any spiritual teacher in modern history has the same track record of success with their students. It's just the fact that waking up is really hard work.
Well, it has been, as I've said, mostly
Yeah.
because of myths. When we get through these myths and we see them for what they were as idealisms that came from an earlier stage of development, we start being able to understand that there's actually a much clearer path forward.
Mm-hmm.
Don't
Mm-hmm.
have,
Okay.
we don't have to keep believing these things that essentially, stab us in our own stomach because we believe that, there's something fundamentally wrong with us. And once we fix that, then we're eligible for enlightenment. There's just one of the 10,000 myths. Right.
Yeah.
So that keeps people in this endless loop of self-improvement. And the
Yeah.
self-improvement industry is very happy to have you with it.
Yes, yes, for sure, for sure. Okay, I wanna just double click on this point now while we're here as well, because I want to ask you if you would say that waking up is difficult to do
Well, what I would say is that it's even harder not to.
because of the pain and suffering that we go through if we don't wake up. Mm.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree
All,
with that.
all of the running from the pain and suffering causes way
Yeah,
more suffering. It's just like
yeah,
the IRS. You know there's going to be a penalty. You're going to have to pay it someday. Can't get away
yeah,
from it. You can't, right? And that's
yeah.
how, if you're running from your own pain and suffering, it's going to keep running after you until one day you have no more energy to run away from it. And that's what
Yes.
I'm afraid of, So they keep running as
Yeah.
hard as until they die. Some people very early on average, way pretty
Yes.
early because of this running away from all kinds of stuff that they don't even need to be. They didn't understand what was going on. It's just a
Sure.
misunderstanding.
Sure. Sure. Yes. So I agree with you on that. There are all kinds of ways that we distract ourselves, repress, suppress pain, try and manipulate reality in our minds to get away from things that are uncomfortable. Absolutely. 100% agree with you on that. That human beings, yeah, are always trying to run away from their pain, pretty much, and that creates more. So yeah, we're in agreement on that. Although, like, what I want to add to that is to progress up the ladder of higher consciousness, if we can use that analogy, you're going to be confronted with the pain that you've repressed. And so there are going to be things that come up for you that need digesting, that need to be felt and experienced and allowed in order for you to go to the next stage. So going on that journey, climbing that ladder at times can feel like running towards your pain. And it can be very scary and it can be very uncomfortable and difficult. It's almost like you're doing it in fast forward because it's all coming at you so quickly, or it can be. So I appreciate what you're saying, like the distinction, waking up, sure, it can be hard, but it's harder than running for the
It's
rest of your
easier,
life.
it's easier than running. That's
Easier
right.
than running.
And when
Right.
people
But you,
realize that, I just want to say, when people realize that, that's the transition from stage 5 to stage 6. Like,
right, right. Okay. So there you go. Yeah, yeah, you stop running. But having said that, my experience is that although those choices are both difficult, waking up is still difficult in and of itself. Would you agree with that?
yes,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
definitely agree. Absolutely.
Okay. Good. Good. No, I appreciate you agreeing with that because there was a sense that I was getting that you were like, no, this is a piece of cake. It's like, going down to the shops and buying a Snickers bar.
I had a session yesterday with a guy who was just sort of getting into some work with me. It was sort of the first session with him. And at the end of it, he said, that actually felt good. I was expecting something way worse. I think he was
Hmm.
expecting to tear his ego down or something like that, which is
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
not to that at all. That doesn't help
Yeah.
anything. And
Yeah.
instead, he felt empowered.
Yes.
And that's what I'm talking about. Now, you're right. We have to go through all of these old feelings, all of these old conditionings. They're horrible. That's what
Hmm.
messed us up royally. And it's been coming down for
Hmm.
thousands of years. So it's not a
Hmm.
small thing. It's a
Yeah.
huge, and we do have to go through it. But there's a way
Yeah.
of going through it that doesn't turn it against ourselves
Sure.
or
Sure.
against the world or others.
Yeah.
It's a way of learning to cooperate with it, allowing these feelings to come and move through without
Mm.
deciding it means something about us that is like
Hmm.
or about other people, blah, blah, blah. When we have
Hmm.
an embracing disposition, healing happens rapidly and directly. It still goes on for a long time, but
Yeah.
it's the difference between, going down a smooth rapids or a very rocky rapids.
Yes, yes, yes. So I really appreciate what you're saying there is essentially that the embracing attitude, the embracing of life and the embracing of what's coming up allows things to be processed when they come up, and that's a much better viewpoint from which to approach life as opposed to blaming the world, blaming other people, blaming ourselves. Yeah, that kind of
We're just
view.
distracting ourselves in our mind or
Just,
following
yeah,
all. Yeah,
yeah,
that
yeah. Okay,
it
cool. All right.
makes for a much
Yeah,
happier life, even though every life is going to contain pain.
yes,
So
yes. Beautiful.
we're can't get around that. But
Okay.
it can be more like pain that we are learning to embrace and learn from and feel through and get closer to each other through, not pain
Mm,
we are pushing away and using to
mm,
tell ourselves that we're not good enough and
mm.
separating from others through, you know.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, well put. Well put. Yeah, I like that. One thing that I've heard you say in the past is we don't need to fix ourselves, we just need to get our unmet needs met. And I was really curious about that statement because I appreciate the not needing to fix ourselves part, that we're not broken, right? There's that view, we're not broken
We're not
fundamentally.
broken. We're not broken. Well, let's just say there may be parts of us that got kind of broken through our childhood, but it can be repaired. But
Yeah, it can be repaired. Yes.
fundamentally, we're not broken. There's
Yes.
nothing
Yes.
existentially wrong with us.
Sure, sure. Okay, but then the part that I was interested in was the part we just need to get our unmet needs met because then I started thinking, okay, what does that look like? Because if someone hears that statement, we need to get our unmet needs met, where I initially went was, oh, okay, so I need to get my unmet needs met by others on the outside, by my romantic partner, by my friends, by my parents, by colleagues, by associates, right? Other people that I interact with, they need to meet my needs and then I'll be whole. I don't think that's what you're saying.
That's
I
not the
think you're
that's just
that's
not
not the
it's not the whole. That's
that's not
only
the whole.
yeah.
So where I went next was, well, it's not necessarily that we're getting our unmet needs met by others on the outside, but it's by us meeting parts of ourselves that we've held back and meeting those needs as they arise inside of us.
So
Is that what you
I want to add to
Yeah.
that. To
Mm.
me, it's not, it's both. And if we don't hold it as both as one, we're not seeing the bigger picture.
Okay.
Self is not separate from others, are not separate from self. We are
Okay.
distinct. We're distinct and we have our own unique gifts and limits, but we're not separate. We're part
Mm.
of the whole and always have been. And so
Mm.
when we're, let's see, I might have lost that thread a little bit. Remind me how you got into it.
It was like getting needs met by the other or getting needs met
Oh,
by
yes,
ourselves.
that's it. It's like self versus other. I think for
Mm.
starters, it's both. When we're infants, we have to get our needs met by mother. We have to
Hmm.
get it from the outside. In fact, for many years, there's a lot we need from the outside.
Hmm.
Um, and then we start learning that we need to start getting from the inside. Now we're getting into stage four. It's like at stage four, rational striving, it's about how do I get independent? How do I get out of the house? How do I get my own place? How do I have a
Mm.
job? And how do I take care of my own needs? Um,
Hmm.
and it's not like that's all we need. We also always need stuff from others. That's always going to keep going on. It's more like we learn to find a balance with that. But a lot of us get stuck. We get stuck thinking we just keep needing it from others. And this is people who didn't get those needs met when they were young, right? When
Yes.
we get that need, let's say for primal, basic, feminine, unconditional love and nourishment, well, then we go about the rest of our lives seeking that to get that need met. And if we
Hmm.
don't find it in childhood, and if we don't find it in teen years, we're out to find it as adults until someday we find it. So
Hmm.
no wonder we turn back into our childhood self when that happens. And all
Hmm.
that comes out, right? And has to get purified and moved through. It's really a
Hmm.
beautiful process, but it doesn't always feel so beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to expose myself a little bit here, and I feel a little bit nervous going here, but I will anyway. Um, one of the things that I find difficult in relationship with my wife is that need around sex and the physical connection, right? Um, to put it crudely, like I can meet that basic drive for, let's say, like ejaculation by masturbating, right? That's one way of taking care of that friction or that drive. But that doesn't meet the physical connection need of being intimate with another. And in order to meet that need, it seems to me that I do need the other to be interested and to want to be intimate with me.
Yes.
So in some ways, I am kind of dependent on
Yes.
on the other
Yes.
meeting. Yeah.
Yes. And so in this way, it's running against the myth of enlightenment that says when you're enlightened, you won't have any exterior needs. You'll be unattached to everything. And, whatever happens is like absolutely perfect. Well, the truth is, it's kind of this huge spectrum. On one end, that's always true. And on the other end of it, that's not at all true. No, we're very attached to
Hmm.
our mates, to our place, to our money, to our food. There's so much we're attached to. We're so in love. I'm so in love with the place that I live in and the car that I drive around in. I, yeah, does that make me unenlightened because I have these attachments? If that's true, fine to somebody, but not what I would. And that's why I avoid the word because that word
Hmm.
has come to mean these ideals that no one can actually attain. If we're
Hmm.
actually human, that's not at all what I would mean by advanced stages of development. We are both attached and unattached, and it's all one. It's all one thing. The mind can't make sense of that, but oops, sorry. Oh well.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I want to ask you now about your experience of of attachment or non-attachment, because that will help clarify it for me at least, and maybe for people that are watching this. Um, So when something that's important to you is criticized, let's say, I would imagine, given, where you're at in your consciousness development, there's not a contraction in you. Am I right in that assumption?
I this is not going to sound normal. There's a contraction in that person, and it flows through me.
Okay. Okay.
And
No, I think I
I'm
understand.
also here to say that it's not like there's nothing in me contracting, because
Hmm.
if somebody's blaring some loud music that I hate, I'm going to feel it and dislike it. And it's
Mm-hmm.
really no different than somebody like pushing some criticism at me, some energy that I don't like. I'll feel that.
Hmm.
The issue is
Okay.
that I'm not going to be resisting feeling that. That's
Right.
I'm like, there's nothing in me that's going, oh, it's more like, or I shouldn't say it this way. It's more of a fundamental thing. It's more like
Yeah.
because it's, this happens from time to time,
Yes.
and I find myself basically slowing down, leaning into the feeling and seeing what wants to be said when and in what way.
Yeah.
And then I feel my way through it. And when I do
Okay.
it, okay, it works for me, you know?
Mm.
It's because I'm not fundamentally resisting that the universe wants me to feel this. Okay,
Yeah.
the universe wants me to feel this. Who am I to say no? It's
Hmm.
bigger.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I appreciate that. That's really clear, and I that's very valuable the way you explained that. The very first sentence you said was something like, the person feels that, but it flows through me.
Yes.
So,
So
so I want to
I
ask about, so what I want to ask about is when you say the person, you mean this body mind that is Ted,
don't know.
the
I meant
person?
this the person who's pushing some critical energy out,
Ah,
right? If that person,
okay.
is harboring some difficult energy about me, if I were, whatever it is, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
It's not to say I'm perfect. Maybe I said something that they didn't like. And so
Okay.
they're projecting some difficult energy at me. I'm going to feel it. That's all. I'm
Mhm.
going
Okay, so the other person feels that, and then the energy flows through you. So as that energy flows through you, there may be some contraction to that experience, but there's nothing in you that says I shouldn't be contracting or I shouldn't be feeling this way. So
to.
everything keeps flowing. There's no stuckness or rigidity
Exactly.
around it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
I'm willing
Okay.
to be crucified,
Interesting.
which
Okay,
is
I'm
my
willing to be
favorite lesson
crucified.
from watching The Chosen, on TV.
Yeah.
Jesus willing to be crucified. And now it makes sense
He
to
was
me.
willing to be crucified, but he also said, Father, why have you forsaken me? So, you know,
Yeah, it's in the moment it was difficult.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine being crucified would be much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So no, that's really clear. All right. So there may still be contraction in your experience, but there's no resistance to the contraction. So that's okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
All
Exactly.
right. Good. That's really clear. Thank you for yeah,
I think that's an
explaining that.
important distinction, really important distinction. This is part of the myths that I want to bust. It's not that we're not going to be human. It's not that we're going to rise above feeling this stuff. We're not going to
Yeah.
rise above. We will rise above the old patterns that dramatize this stuff.
Yeah.
We we will heal that stuff. But
Yeah.
we're not gonna stop feeling things. And if we do, we've went in the wrong direction.
So I guess this is probably where this point and also the point about the ego being in the way or not, these are probably the two most fundamental differences between your model and say Vishrant's model, the model that I've been most exposed to, in the sense that Um, one of Vishrant's main teachings is openness, and that is openness to experience, right? Warmly welcoming whatever arises in our experience. And you can feel, I can feel in my body when I'm open or when I'm closed, when I'm allowing an experience or when I'm defending against an experience and don't want that to be here. I want to push it away. And the way that I understand what he's pointing to there is that the practice of openness, so the practice of again and again allowing, accepting, surrendering to whatever is going on in us is the way to higher consciousness. That is the way to that whole embrace that you're pointing to, the whole being awakening, right?
Yes.
That's one of the practices, one of the methodologies. But then the way he describes his experience now is different to how you describe your experience now. The way he describes his experience is that contraction doesn't happen anymore inside. So someone will say something that might be critical of him. There's no contraction in the body because openness has been practiced and surrender has been practiced to such a degree that it's not practice anymore. There's no one doing anything. It's just what happens in his being, right? So if I asked him that same question, if someone criticizes you, is there a contraction? I'm very confident his answer would be no, I don't experience any contraction. It just comes in and then I might respond in the moment. There might be a response, but no contraction that I sense.
I think here's where the uniqueness needs to be taken into consideration. He's a type
Okay.
8, right?
He
Type
is.
8 not admit to fear, contraction, pain, suffering, problems in general, right? That's just a
Uh-huh.
type for you, right? And it's, how deep is he going? Clearly he's going very deep in many ways.
He is. He's
Yes,
definitely going very
but
deep.
does he get that the people who are not designed to be a type 8 are not going to necessarily feel the same way? I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know if he's gotten out of himself on that point, but that's the kind of
Hmm.
I like to take. It's like, let's look at many different ways of seeing the person and seeing how much of this is about uniqueness. I say that a
Okay.
lot of that is about uniqueness. It's going to be,
Okay.
here's another myth. I was working with somebody 2 days ago, and she's been following somebody who's been doing teachings based on Course in Miracles. And she
Yeah.
thought love or fear. And so every time she had fear, she's like doing it wrong. Well, she's been at this for decades. What if it's not true? What if it's not love or fear? What if it's both?
Hmm.
That's really it. It's not one or the other. It's not about we're going to be just all on the bright side and eliminate the dark side. That's another form of ignorance, in my opinion. And
Hmm.
duality, form of duality. If
Hmm.
you're going to allow the whole, allow the whole.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me in the sense that everyone's unique and everyone is going to have their own um, experience and path towards higher consciousness, the
Yeah,
practices that work for them. And
that's
also not to set up another dualistic split, like this but not this, that and not that. It's
that's
both
right.
and.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
And the idea of no contraction, I think it's too perfect.
Right. Right. Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, look, I was never able to achieve it. Let's put it that way. I was never able to get to a place where I could be completely open in any circumstance, no matter what. Like there was always, and I was looking for it in myself, and I still do to some degree. I look for contraction and go, okay, well, there's something here that I'm caught on. Let's look at the beliefs. Let's look at, what's going on. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. I want to free not only people who want to awaken, but people who are already awake and they think there's something wrong with them. And that's been part of
Mm.
my business since day one in 1998 with this level of
Mm.
work. There have been people who came from Daf region in particular, who got a massive they got excuse me, a massive double-edged transmission. On one hand,
Hmm.
it's like, you are the divine, awaken as that. And on the other hand, it's like, no, you're not, only I am, Mr.
Right.
Right?
Right.
They're
Yeah.
like head spinning, and I'm like, no, that part was wrong.
Hmm.
Everybody has this ability to register this fact that we are the divine while we're being human.
Yeah, so this leads to this other point which I wanted to bring up as well, which is the ego is in the way, right? And if some so it's a very fine point and it's difficult to articulate because when you say you are already the divine, I can say yes, I believe you when you say that I am already divine and that everyone is already divine. But there are differences in the degree to which someone recognizes that for themselves, identifies as that, the way they operate in the world. You know, if they're very ego identified, there's going to be a lot of defensiveness and a lot of separation, and that's going to inform the way they interact with people. So when Adida says you are divine and no, no, I'm the only one that's divine, what I hear from what he's saying there I wouldn't necessarily say that it's not true what he's saying. I'd just say it's contextual. You are already divine, is what he's saying, but you don't quite fully know it yet because you're still identified with the individual separate self. So he's pointing at something like,
I
hey, here's
was,
a possibility for you.
I was pointing at the psychotic part of him that was
Yeah,
believing that he was the only one. That's what I meant. To him,
okay.
part of him that, was basically saying, come to the unity through me.
Right, right. Yeah,
And, that was not empowering, bottom line. It made
yeah,
it very hard, even for those who really received his transmission on the divine side, to know how,
yes,
and he didn't do enough of his own shadow work. This guy who did some
right,
major, and
right. Yeah,
it was a double-edged transmission, and it really confused people. So, but
sure. Okay.
I totally agree with that. We are divine. We always were, and we always will be, and everything is. And how could it be otherwise? And it is just
Sure.
the development of our perception of what's true.
Yes. 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 Okay. Okay. And that brings up another interesting point for me is the willingness of teachers to acknowledge others' awakening, because I feel like that's important to be able to say, yes, this person is awake or this person is in an advanced stage of consciousness. To me, indicates a humility in that person and an ability to recognize that others have access to the divine in the same way that they purportedly do, as opposed to saying, I am the only one with access, and the only way to get there is through me, which is setting up this power and control system.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the ticket, and you need to buy this ticket to get on board. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, to me, this is the entire point of helping people awaken. Those of us who have this sort of karma to help other people awaken know without a doubt that it is our job to help those behind us surpass us,
Hmm.
not just get to the same place we did.
Hmm.
If we don't do that, we're not succeeding. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't mean to be judgmental. It's just the way I at least process it for myself. I'm not succeeding. I'm not helping my students and clients get beyond where I was able to. Because
Sure.
the whole
Okay.
point is evolution,
Yes.
evolution individually and socially. And
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
got to be better than where we are now. That's for sure.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I would say so. Okay, so I want to go back to this thing about the ego because you put out a video recently which was about the ego being the obstacle, and you said that there are three ways of looking at this. One way is that we need to kill the ego. Another way is that we need to transcend the ego. And the third way is that we embrace the ego. And you were in support of the embrace the ego methodology.
I am in support of a fourth approach.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Tell me the
The
fourth
fourth
approach.
approach is fulfill the needs that give rise to the egoic tendencies.
Fulfill the needs that give rise to the egoic tendencies. Okay. Can
If
you
the
expand on
ego's,
that?
let's say the egoic tendency is narcissism. Narcissism is born of somebody who didn't get enough love, unconditional love, and positive support. So, as I was pointing out earlier, this person then grows up craving unconditional love and positive support. And they
Mhm,
crave it so much that they arrange their whole lives around this principle that they need this
mhm.
from everybody around them. And they reject people who won't give it to them. And if the person who that they have gotten close to starts to talk about that, they'll completely change the topic and, do the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, sorry, another brief lapse. Remind me where we were.
So you're advocating a fourth way, which is to fulfill the egoic tendency, fulfill the needs
Yeah.
that
Needs,
you,
right. Right.
yeah.
So if we start with kill the ego, it's like saying the ego is the part of us that's trying to keep us feeling safe. So if
Mm-hmm.
we kill the part of us that's trying to help us feel safe, we're going to feel very unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
And that part of us that wants to feel safe is part of our nervous system and really needs to feel safe. It's a
Mm-hmm.
basic. We need to have a
Mm-hmm.
regulated nervous system. We need to feel
Mm-hmm.
safe. So if we try to kill the ego, we're getting in our own way. If we try to transcend the ego, as if to say, I don't need that, it's not important, I'm above that, uh, I don't have to deal with that, then the ego will eventually come back with a vengeance and make sure that you are forced to question that entire perspective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you got the sort of more modern embracers. Okay, yes, I have an ego. I will embrace and embody my ego. But wait, you still have that ego. What about that? So that's why, in my opinion, the only way the ego is ever going to quiet down and eventually dissolve is when we fulfill the needs that give rise to the egoic tendencies. We need the love, and there's something from the outside. People who never got that love from the outside, they don't even know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
They can't metabolize it even when it comes.
Yeah.
So they have to go through remedial development pieces to be able
Yeah.
to kind of development. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions to ask around this. One is like there's a model of awakening that I'm familiar with, which is like, you know, going out, going up a mountain, let's say, and then coming down the other side. And the going out part is developing the sense of self, developing the ego into a strong ego, being able to operate in the world effectively and autonomously and all that kind of stuff, right? Becoming a really strong, healthy individual, psychologically speaking. And then once you get to that point, the journey down the mountain or the journey back in, back home is, going the opposite way. It's letting go of stuff. It's seeing through stuff. It's becoming more whole and more transparent until, that ego has naturally, let's say, fallen away. It's
Exactly.
it's outstayed its welcome. It's no longer needed. So
Yes.
I sort of see that as that rings true to me, rings true to my experience. Um, One thing that I would say, I mean, given that analogy, I would say that I'm still on the journey, on the first leg of the journey, trying to develop a healthy sense of ego myself. get those needs met that result in those egoic tendencies inside myself. And I would say that it feels to me from where I sit that there's a danger that that journey just goes forever because the needs are bottomless and endless, and I'll just be forever on that hamster wheel trying to fulfill those needs. So yeah, I wanted to see what you had to say about that.
Well, I totally agree with all of that. But see, that's part of the process. The recognition that there is no end to the needs and that I can't get no satisfaction ultimately is the difference between stage 5 and stage 6 in the eye conscious
Mm-hmm.
model.
Hmm.
So once you get past that and you're willing to at least begin to allow some decay of this idealism to
Hmm.
affect the whole way you've been pushing away the dark stuff and moving toward the light, and allow yourself to descend on the other side of the mountain instead of
Hmm.
going for escape velocity, which I
Hmm.
went for, and it didn't work
Sure.
for me.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. What I found is that the only way to integrate the infinite consciousness is to embrace the very finite limits and difficulties of humanness
Mm,
because
mm.
they're the same thing.
Yeah.
If we push away what looks like one aspect of this same thing, it pushes away the other aspect of the same thing.
Yes, I've heard you say that before. If we push down our human parts, we are also pushing down the divine parts, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. That rings very, very true to me. I
Yeah.
wanted to just ask, quickly again about because the statement you made initially was rather than those first three ways of dealing with the ego, the fourth way is to fulfill the needs that result in the egoic tendencies. But really what you're saying is it's more nuanced than that. It's to fulfill the
Yes.
needs enough to get to the point where you realize
Yes.
this is an infinite game here.
Yes. That's
This is
right.
an infinite loop.
That's right.
Right.
Thank you for
Mm.
saying. It's a great clarification. It's
Okay.
true. And but the reason I sort of let myself say it is because to me that's part of the needs. We have a need to have a bigger perspective on our own needs,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
to have a
Yeah.
new relationship with those needs, and not a
Mm.
childhood relationship with our needs and wants,
Hmm.
and to be able to
Hmm.
discern the real difference between needs and wants as an adult, which may be very different than it was as we were children. And it will be very
Yeah.
different. It will
I
be
think
very,
that's such an important distinction, the distinction between needs and wants, because in psychological, in common language, needs are synonymous with wants. I need um, I need to go on this holiday to Spain. I need to have this new iPhone. None of those are needs, they're just desires. But the way we speak about them, it's as if they're
right?
existentially, crucial to our survival. It's an important distinction to make there.
Yes, you might make some enemies among the people who are involved in computers and iPhones, but I
Yeah,
totally agree with you. Those are not
yeah,
needs.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Beautiful.
And that's
Okay.
a big distinction because really, in a lot of ways, the awakening process is a kind of updating of one's software so that
Mm,
one no longer operates from the childhood operating system. As
mm.
one
Yeah,
client, inside of that crappy old hut that he constructed to protect himself from what was going on. Um, yeah, to eventually getting out of that and seeing that as just what it was, a childhood construct to help him feel safe enough to become an
yeah.
adult and feel how difficult life is.
Yes. And I totally agree with that need for safety and that being inbuilt into our nervous system. I've tried for many years to skip over that need for safety and to push through my own fear and to push myself into uncomfortable situations in order to attempt to surrender to them and let go to them. But it hasn't worked in my experience. It just creates more resistance, more turmoil inside that then bubbles away, and I'm like pretending that it's not there, trying to, be present or whatever. And the more I relax and allow my need for safety to be here and part of my experience, the easier I'm able to navigate life. So yeah, that need for safety feels fundamental to me, and people out there advocating ignoring your own intuition around safety and what feels safe to you feels unsafe to me. Like that advocacy feels unsafe to me. Yeah.
Feels dangerous and violent to me.
Mm, mm,
And I've
yeah.
seen plenty of it, and it's horrible,
Mm,
horrible
yeah.
when stuff happens. You know, a notable example was when that guy took a bunch of people through a huge, somewhere in the Midwest some years ago, took a bunch of people through a hot tent ritual where everybody was like baking at very high temperatures and people were trying to get out and he wouldn't let them out. And he badgered them,
Right.
thinking there was something wrong with their desire for safety, and they died.
Yeah.
Many of them died.
Yeah.
So I
Right.
find violent and dangerous.
Yeah. Another example for me is I've been watching a lot of Osho documentaries lately, actually.
What that?
Osho?
Osho, yes, yeah.
Osho, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, yeah. And look, a lot of documentaries are quite negative about how he ran his commune. I don't really have any comments to make about that, but the therapists that came in, particularly to Pune in the early days, he had therapists around him running groups, right? Psychotherapy groups. And one of the views that took hold in that commune was around sexuality and around jealousy. And it was like if you were in a monogamous relationship and your partner slept with another person and you were feeling jealous, there was something wrong with you. You needed to work on your jealousy and to let it go. Like that's in the way of your higher consciousness, in the way of your awakening.
We
And
highlight myth of enlightenment. Deny
yeah, yeah,
your truth because your truth is the problem, says the guru. I
yeah,
say that's the problem.
yeah,
So
yeah.
anyways, go on. I just needed to
Well,
highlight.
no, I appreciate that. That to me just feels like some idealistic notion of what it means to be transcendent or divine. It's like the human no longer plays out or the human is ignored. So if you're feeling jealous, that's the work to do. Not that's part of the safety that you need, and that's something to be honored and respected. So yeah. And look. I feel like in all of these things, in all of this development of human consciousness, there's experiments that go on, right? We conduct experiments as individuals, in groups, and sometimes those experiments don't really work out very well. But we can learn a lot from those failed experiments. When they don't really work very well, we can look at them and go, okay, where did we go wrong here? What was done that wasn't so in line with reality?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Mm.
Netflix.
Thank you, Netflix. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Okay. So the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about was you spoke about a myth being purifying yourself and what that means. So there's a point that I disagree with in the sense of I think there is a place again for purification or even if you don't want to use that term, I think there's a place for raising your energy levels, your vibration, refining your energy. That growth is necessary in being in touch with your energetic state and growing as a being. And I think the traditional Hindu philosophy around energy, they would talk about the three gunas being tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic. So tamasic energy being really sleepy, lethargic, dull, thick consciousness, and rajasic being this very energetic, like excited movement, flowing high energy state, and then sattvic being essentially what you're going for on the top, which is this peaceful, calm, relaxed energy. Okay?
It's not
You
about
can,
it's not about one, two, three Jello. It's about the top layer of the Jello.
yeah, well, that is what, is traditionally pointed at. It's like you need to get there.
That's right.
Um, but I do feel like so. It's a fine point because you can get in the habit of going, oh, tamasic bad, rajasic bad, sattvic good. I need to get rid of the other energies in order to transcend them and get beyond them, right? And I feel like that's not necessarily true. Tamasic and rajasic energy are also natural and they're part of being human. But I feel like as a person, climbs that ladder of consciousness and goes up the stages, the experience that they have tends to be more refined and more sattvic than the other two. So they may still feel sleepy from time to time, and they may still feel excited and enthusiastic about things from time to time. But there's also this background that tends to be there all the time, which is like everything's okay. Like life is okay, no matter what is going on the screen of consciousness, the movie that I'm watching, everything's just all right, And so that understanding and that knowing creates the ground for sattvic energy to be the predominant energy in that system. Um, so that's what I wanted to say. Like, I hear you saying the myth of purification, but I feel like there's some truth in there.
Okay. Oh boy, this will be fun. Um, because Maharishi was really into these three gunas, and he was really into us doing and experiencing all the sattvic stuff. And when people did not have sattvic experiences, they were kind of shunned.
Mhm.
And that was not very sattvic. Um,
Mhm.
in my experience, as you say, these are all very natural aspects of being human. And I would go much further and say they're natural aspects of being divine. They're
Mhm.
natural aspects of being, period. Being
Mhm.
has all of these layers and levels of frequencies and vibrations and possible experiences and dimensions and all of that. And nothing is wrong with any of them. But we
Yeah.
humans are very fond of deciding what are the idealistic goals that we're moving toward, the myths of enlightenment. And in the ancient Eastern and especially Hindu myths of enlightenment, sattva is part of the goal.
Mhm.
And I'm here to say that that's part of the problem. Because then when you find yourself living in lower frequencies and huge limits and sattva and I mean in rajas and tamas, are you unenlightened? How does that make any sense? You're saying enlightenment is only sattva? So who is only sattva? Is that possible? Can one element of being be separated from the others? No, no, it can't. So anyway, that was my short rant.
Okay, so I really appreciate that. It's really good because it allows me to agree with you on most of what you said and then disagree on a small sliver. So when you were saying Maharishi used to say similar things, and when people were not being sattvic, they were shunned. you know, I have experience of that, lots and lots and lots of experience of that, right? There can be this sort of understanding in spiritual circles that dense energy is bad and we need to clear dense energy and move away from it and get it out of our system so that we can see clearly and be open and present, right?
Right.
And that can also lead to separation between people. If I'm a spiritual seeker and I'm hanging around people that I think have dense energy, I can be like, well, I don't want to be around you. I want to separate myself from you because otherwise I'm going to pick up your dense energy and then, that's going to cloud my consciousness and that just feels uncomfortable and I don't like it. So I'm
Yeah.
going to I'm going to live quite an isolated life because I want to maintain that sattvic state, that clarity of consciousness, right? And I agree with you that that's all in the way because what that really is that's just reinforcing separation. That's reinforcing this concept of I'm a separate self and you're a separate self and we need to stay away from each other. So so yes, I'm with you on that. However, however, let me ask about your experience. Okay, let me tell you my experience and then ask about yours.
Okay.
When I'm feeling the most clear and the most grounded and present and the most open, I'm feeling predominantly sattvic. Like if I have a good meditation or a good self-inquiry, or I enjoy a nice conversation with a friend, or whatever it is, go for a walk in nature and there's beautiful trees around me, beautiful river flowing. I feel very sattvic, very calm, very relaxed, very here. Everything's wonderful. And there are peak experiences that I've had, like Satori's, Zen Buddhist term for glimpses of truth, where the sattvic is so strong that it takes over my whole energetic system, all of the chakras, and there's just openings, pop, pop, pop going off all over the place. And it's like just a Shakti bomb, right? So and those times and those moments where sattva is predominant feel somehow um like the word that I want to use is like truer or closer to reality, closer to wholeness, closer to being in touch with the divine or experiencing the divine in me. And moments when this often happens when I'm working on the computer because I'm an accountant and I work long hours on the computer all day. If I'm, grinding away with a particular document for a client and I've spent hours and hours on the computer, all that mental energy
Yeah.
creates a lot of tamasic, and that's not as nice. So there is something in my experience that hints at the truth of that for me, that the three gunas and that sattvic is at least in like terms of pleasure and pain, it's more pleasurable to be in sattvic. So that's
Yes.
my experience, okay? And that's why I feel that way about the three gunas. Now I want to ask you about your experience. As you as you developed in consciousness, would you say that your experience of those three gunas, I'll get quite technical here, the percentage of time throughout the day that you are experiencing kind of sattvic states as opposed to tamasic and rajasic started to increase. So your consciousness goes up and you're experiencing more sattva. Is that true?
At certain stages of my process, there would be more of that sort of thing. If you're equating sattva with pure consciousness, then sure, I
Yes.
had stages in my life where there was lots of that, or heart openings, or energy openings that all felt wonderful and expanded. And if you're calling that sattva, okay, great, lots of sattva. And then there were other parts of your process and mine where it's the opposite, and it all comes crashing down, and we feel lots of pain, lots of tamas, and lots of rajas. And if we keep thinking that enlightenment means we only get the big expanded stuff, we got a problem. That's what I'm talking about, right? So,
Agreed. Agreed.
you asked me my experience. My experience is I feel the whole thing, the whole range of these frequencies, right? And it's infinite from the high frequencies through the low frequencies. I got to have a rant here. I hate this whole thing about how we're all supposed to be going for high frequencies. What the
Mm,
hell are they talking about? I mean, I know they know what they're talking about. And I know people are certain people are tuned into that stuff. But it's like, is there a problem with the medium and low frequencies? Or is the universe needing all of these frequencies? Right?
mhm.
Why is it such a problem that we're having low and medium frequencies? I'm not interested in only going for the high ones. I spent my whole first 30 years of my life going for the high frequencies. And it led me to drop into my whole being through my pain.
Mhm.
And now I'm living in a completely different place. High, low, medium, whatever happens is okay. It's all part of it.
Okay, so let me ask you about that place. Now you're living in a totally different place. What is your day-to-day experience now in terms of those three gunas?
It's all there in every moment. It's all there. Like I can, the infinite consciousness. Yeah, right. It's obvious. It's been obvious for a super long time. The oneness of all that, yeah, had that a long time ago. Even the no self thing, that happened a long time ago. So now it's like, I don't care about consciousness. What the hell is consciousness? It's just
Mhm.
one thing. It's just one
Mhm.
thing. And it's what's happening. Whatever is happening is the one thing. That's it.
Okay.
I call that sattva. I don't call that sattva. I call that whole being awakening because it has all of it.
Okay. Yes. I hear you on that, that it includes all of it. I get that. And I want to ask about
Yes, there's less of the unnecessary pain. There's a lot
okay.
less
Okay.
necessary pain.
Okay. Great.
So there is less of the rajas and tamas that was born of the resistance to pain.
Yes. Okay. That's what I'm kind of hinting
Yeah.
at. So as we embrace our whole being, as we turn towards our pain and our suffering and welcome it as part of our experience, we become more aware that it is all part of a unified whole. There's no resistance to any of it. And and so that's all true. And
And we
and
have
as that becomes
preferences. We have our preferences and we have our process of evolution that takes us toward less unnecessary pain, less
yes,
un
and the unnecessary pain and suffering that human beings tend to indulge in, that I tend to indulge in, creates more tamasic and creates more rajasic because all of the reactions to the world and all the reactions to myself and the blame and the judgment and all of that creates
yes,
those energy forms. Yeah,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay, good. I think we've found a point of agreement then.
And maybe another way to put this is that we let go of our resistance to these parts that we thought meant there was something wrong with us. We let go
Yes.
of resisting rajas and tamas, and
Yes.
that puts us in a place where we live in what I call flow. We allow it
Yeah.
all, and therefore we are actually feeling it all. We're feeling rajas and tamas as much as we're feeling sattva, and we're not
Mm.
resisting any part of it, but we're not also not creating a sort of uh, repressive energy on top of, because a lot of people also unknowingly resist sattva. That they're afraid to allow the great expansion because that's going to blow up their ego and they don't feel safe, or
Hmm.
and other
Hmm.
reasons that are often very personal and very specific.
Sure.
But yeah,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you on that. Absolutely. Just seems like
Mm.
it's kind of on a different level. We get to this place where it's not like we become mostly sattvic, but we drop the mostly resistant to all three gunas.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think look with different spiritual models and with different ways of looking at the spiritual growth process, there are different emphasis that gets placed on, different aspects. And you've developed a model, the eye consciousness model, with clearly delineated stages. And I appreciate the way you've framed it all and the research behind it because it's very clear to see where someone's at and what the practices would be to take someone to the next level, given where they're at. And it's very clear to see what the upper echelons of that, model look like, which is fantastic. Um, but you're coming at it from a very much a embrace everything, um, you know, move towards wholeness framing. And
Yes,
other spiritual teachers come from a very different framing, which is like, this is what you need to move towards and be
exactly.
aware of the other stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, for instance, loving kindness and compassion, according to particular human cultures' ideas about what that's supposed to look like. When you're really pissed at somebody, now I got to go work on my loving kindness. I'm not grateful enough, right? It's like sometimes some of the most revelatory openings happening to my clients when I encourage them to go say what they're actually angry about to the person they're angry with, but in a skillful way that doesn't push anything, doesn't push the responsibility on the other person, just takes
Hmm.
for what we're feeling. And when we do that,
Hmm.
like, there's nothing wrong with anger. There's nothing wrong with any of
Yeah.
the feelings. We just didn't know how to
Yeah.
handle them.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, like, I feel like there can be a place for that loving kindness instruction, but it's skillful and it's nuanced and it's case by case. So, it's not to say that you throw out all the loving kindness and you just, if you're angry and you just vent it. It's
Right.
like there's a wisdom in there. Yeah.
That's that's right. And that comes
Yeah.
to us as we allow ourselves, as we trust that the impulses we get, that the universe gives us to live, that we trust that the universe brings us these impulses for good reasons,
Hmm.
and that we allow ourselves to have these impulses. Sometimes,
Hmm.
yes, it's anger. And a lot of times what really gets in the way is our mental ideas about how I shouldn't come out with my anger, how I shouldn't come out with my needs, how I shouldn't this or that, how I should never criticize or reflect to somebody how they're affecting me that I don't like.
Hmm.
This what this course that Hillary and I are doing is about. We're doing this course
Hmm.
called Come Forth with Your Truth to help people
Right.
get a particular peace. Because the more you allow the universe to come through you and you learn to do it with skill, it's a completely different life. Whole
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you on that totally. And I feel like that's very valuable and very important. And look, one of the things that I was telling you before we started recording this podcast, that I'm a new father, right? I've been a new father for
Congratulations.
nearly 2 years. Yeah, thank you. And one of the things that I've been struggling to integrate in this journey as a father is I had this self-image before fatherhood of not being a very angry person, of being someone who was quite, I'm a type 9 on the Enneagram, right? So type 9s are peacemakers. They don't get angry. They're just totally calm and able to, like, make it work. Let's all get along and sing Kumbaya. So that was my image of myself, is like, no, I don't have much anger. But being in a really intimate relationship with my son and being in a very stressful sort of life situation, with, lack of sleep and learning all the things to take care of a child and being attuned to them and attaching to them and all this stuff, it's such an intense life journey, right? Becoming a father, like journeying into fatherhood. And it's brought up a lot of anger and resistance and bitterness and just stuff for me, right? And one of the things, that I notice when you were just talking then is, because I have these ideas about anger not really being okay fundamentally, that I shouldn't be angry, that I should be a loving father and I should be there for my son and I should be able to be present with him when he's throwing tantrums and just be open and okay with it. When other things start coming up in me, I'm like, what is this? Where did this come from? Why am I having this experience? Oh, I need to work with that and control it and it makes me really tight and rigid, right? And I'm sort of, having worked through that to some degree and seen it over and over and over again. The way I look at it now is like, the anger itself isn't necessarily a problem, that
Exactly.
that it's there. It's telling me something about, what's going on. Um, but what I what I want to do, the way I would like to approach it is to allow that, to breathe into it, to fully feel it, and to be strong and to be able to set firm boundaries when they're needed, and to be able to be flexible when it's needed, and to be able to hold the space in presence with my son while allowing everything to be here, and also not act out. So, ideally, not yell, not physically control him, hold him down, like express what I need to express from a place of alignment, inside myself, but without the judgment and the self-criticism that goes along with not being angry. So that's become the practice that I'm attempting in those moments now, is to be
Beautiful.
strong and present, but not self-critical. Yeah.
And I think for you to be able to model for him feeling anger and expressing it in ways that are healthy, that's what he needs. That's what the whole
Yes,
world
absolutely.
needs. The whole world needs.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And you know what, one of the most beautiful things is learning teaching him how to be emotionally intelligent. So teaching him, Daddy's angry now. Daddy's a 4 out of 10 angry. This is why I'm angry. And he gets it. He can say, Jude's angry, or I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling frightened, I'm feeling whatever. Like for someone that's 2 to be able to say that kind of stuff lights me up, because it's like he
My
he
God,
gets it.
that's,
He knows what emotions are, right?
can
Yeah.
you imagine what the world will be like when the kids learn about emotions?
Yes,
Oh
it's
my
so
God.
beautiful. It's so beautiful. And also there's moments like just lately that have been happening where I don't have to say anything. He can sense the change in me and he goes, Daddy's angry. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, son. You're
That's
right.
right. That's right. But whereas our generation grew up with these parents who were repressing their own feelings, so we never
Yeah.
felt the permission to give ourselves our own attention on our feelings. We didn't know what to do with them because they didn't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
but
that's right.
a lot of what we're doing in this generation is we're going, oh yeah, that was actually kind of messed up. We're going to
Yeah.
turn this around. We're going to feel this stuff, and we're going to
Yeah.
show the generation how to be with emotions. That's
Yes. Yes.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's like he's the perfect mirror, for me. And I'm sure anyone who's just becoming a parent like that, if you want to embrace it, that's a real personal growth journey to go on, man. Far out.
And I think you're in a great position to really get what we talked about at the very beginning. Yeah, it's hard, but would you rather go back to not being
Absolutely.
awake?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's harder.
Yeah, I
It's
agree. I
a lot of
agree.
unnecessary suffering without knowing any way out
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
perpetuating that around us.
Yes, yes. And that perpetuating piece is something that I'm super keen and aware of as well, because as a child, I wasn't necessarily allowed to have my strong feelings. My strong feelings it was clear to me that they weren't necessarily welcome. Like it was discouraged for me to feel strong sadness or strong anger. So it was like, oh, okay, to be accepted, I have to be like a good boy and like quiet and, you know, that sort of thing. And I can see very clearly the potential for that generational belief system to flow through me down to Jude, because the things that trigger me are like him being big and having emotions and outbursts, and I'm like, shut that down in a box, mate. And you can see where unconsciousness comes in and goes, yeah, that's just how the world is, right? But if you're conscious and you're aware and you're trying to see it clearly, you can change that cycle.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. And it's really the hardest, as you say, it's the hardest thing to do because the momentum behind the fundamental life way in which we're resisting everything we didn't like was incredibly intense.
Mm.
And
Mm.
it's what has perpetuated the age of ignorance for thousands of years.
Yes.
And it's in our generation to and the next to really shift that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Mm.
Yeah.
Maybe we should
So
do some more another time. I think we've been going.
yeah, we have been going a long time. Is there anything that you wanted to say before we wrap up on the myths of enlightenment or anything else we've covered?
Just go to my website at tedstrauss.com and click the Myths of Enlightenment button, the myth button at the top, and read some of the stuff I put there and see if you can identify with it. And I put practices up there. For each of these myths, I put practices that'll help us move from myth to our own reality. It takes us
Mm,
from our mind into our body and into our own
mm,
reality. And it speeds the awakening process. So it's a way of
mm,
helping us sober down out of these idealisms and get real in a way with our awakening process that allows us to move it on directly.
mm,
Yeah,
mm.
that's what I want to say.
Beautiful, beautiful. Awesome, Ted. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking to me. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Maitreya. This has been great. Just what I wanted. I got to rant. It was wonderful. And I loved how you challenged me. All that was great. And I hope we get to do it again.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Mm.